Sure, I don't need an introduction. I know y'all know who I am. Mike Robles.
Mike?
Yeah. So this is just going to be a very intimate setting, just very laid back. A lot of anecdotes, stories to learn from. I was telling Colin, there's going to be things that, to borrow from like biblical study wording, there's going to be things that are prescriptive. In other words, take what I say and, you know, if you want to apply it, great. Or there's going to be some descriptive things. In other words, you're going to hear my story and be like, okay, I don't want to do that, and learn from my mistakes. I'm going to be referring to my phone a lot because this is where my stuff's at. But how I became a drummer, it was spring break of 1993. So I'm showing my age here. I was 12 years old. Music was always in our family. My dad was a musician. I say was, I mean, he's still alive, but cancer has since, you know, not really allowed him to be able to play music like he used to. My two uncles were musicians. My aunts, you know, she sang a lot. My cousins were musicians. So music was always in the family, whether we were listening to it on the radio or on the TV, or whether we were actually at my dad's practice pad or at their gigs or whatever. There was always music. So I was actually aspiring to be a guitarist. Cousin Al is a phenomenal guitarist. I could just sit in front of him for hours and just watch him play guitar. I mean, it was just mesmerizing. And so, and he was like the rock and roll cousin, like that really cool cousin that everyone wanted to hang out with. One particular night, like I said, spring break of '93, it was on a Friday. I went and bought a cassette from the local store here in town. Always go visit my aunt and uncle, and of course that's where he lived. And I said, "Hey Al, let's jam to this cassette." So I wanted to jam out to it with the intent of, "Hey, let's listen to the guitar parts." You know what I mean? And so we're jamming along. We're just kind of listening to it, you know, and just getting into it. And I said, "Man, it's some really good guitars, right?" And he's like, "Oh man," he goes, "It is." He goes, "But let me show you some other guitars." And so he popped in another band, we were jamming along to the first track, and then all of a sudden in the middle of the song, the drummer does this ridiculous drum fill that was just like mind blowing, and I was just mesmerized. And I just remember like my jaw hit the floor, and I just said, "Can you rewind that part?" And he goes, "Which guitar part?" And I said, No. I said, "Not the guitars, the drums." And so ever since that night, I was hooked. I remember going home and telling my parents that I wanted to be a drummer, and boy, were they let down. They did not like that. Just to let y'all know, any pupil that I've had, anyone that's been under my tutelage, Richard's been one such person. Anytime somebody, you know, I take them under my wing to teach them how to play drums, we try and go at least 6 months without even touching a drum set. And the reason for that is because, I was telling Colin, is that anyone wants to play the drums mainly just because they're fun. They make noise, they're loud. It takes a certain level of discipline where after the smoke clears, after 6 months, if somebody's still around, then you know that they want to play it for the sake of playing drums and not just to make noise. So my daughter's friend was kind of surprised at that when she wanted to learn how to play drums. She goes, "Man, 6 months?" She goes, "That's a long time." I said, "Well, try 3 years because that's how long my parents made me wait." Because, you know, when I finally told my dad that I wanted to play play drums, well, nobody in my family, immediate, extended, nobody, was playing drums. So Dad was able to take the guitar that he got me. He was able to use it. My cousins were able to use it. My uncles were able to use it. Everyone else was able to use it. They didn't want to just buy me a drum set and then 5 weeks, 5 months down the road, I say, well, now I want to take up harp. Because then no one was going to be able to utilize the drums. You know what I'm saying? So
Testing your commitment.
they were, and you know, they bought me all the drumsticks I wanted, but they're like, "We are not getting you a drum set just yet." So it was spring break of '93 when I told him I want to be a drummer. It wasn't until like February-ish or March-ish of '96 when they finally got me my drum kit, and I finally proved myself to them. So So that's my backstory. Again, just referring to my phone, and please forgive the. I'm prepared, but I know it may look like I'm not prepared, but I'm just. So I've been drumming. I've been utilizing my gifts for the Lord. Out of the 30 years, it was 32 years ago. 32 years ago when I became a drummer. It wasn't long after about 2.5 years later, 2 years later, that the Lord saved me. First 2 or so years before that, I was cutting my teeth on a lot of secular bands. And so a lot of it was like rock and roll and stuff. So I was really air drumming to a lot of those bands. I was hitting pots and pans, hitting the pillows and stuff along to their songs and stuff. So, but anyways, I've been utilizing my gifts for the Lord for the better part of 30 years now. Whether it's in church or whether I had my own band that was. What we're going to do is we're going to go over something today. I was telling Colin that depending on how this goes, I really hope that this is the first of future ones. So basically what I'm going to teach you guys is just the basic 4/4 beat. Okay, and little man knows what I'm talking about here because I actually taught him this. So it's amazing how many songs at their core have the 4/4 beat. I was coming back from work the other day. I was driving on the road, and like this little experiment. I think in the hour and a half that I was on the road, there was about 10 songs that came on, and I kid you not, I want to say pretty much every single one of them had the same beat. And forgive me, because the more I talk, the more I kind of dry up. But at its core, at its foundation, was the same beat, and all it was just whatever drummer was drumming on that album or that track or what have you, they were just adding their own little flair. But if you strip it down all the way to its very core, it's the same beat over and over again. So I did this little experiment. I was like, okay, this song's playing, and it's not necessarily the same genre. It's not even necessarily the same time period. There was a song that I was listening to that was from the 70s. There was a song that was from the early 90s, one from the mid 80s, and they all at their very core had the same beat. That's not to say that every song out there has the same beat. That's not to say that. That's just to say it's just amazing how many songs out there have that same beat. So, what it is right here is a 4/4 beat is just basically this. You got the hi-hat, and I'm just going to use a hi-hat, the snare, and the drum, and the bass. So it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And what you're going to do is you're going to play the bass drum on the 1 and the 3 and the snare on the 2 and the 4. So at its core, when you strip a lot of those songs down to just its simplest nature, you're going to hear this. Okay? You wouldn't think it until you actually start thinking about it, and then you hear, a lot of times because of the different metronomes, however fast or however slow their songs are, if you hear. I just played the beginning of Back in Black by AC/DC. Then, if I speed it up a little bit, I can play the beginning of Billie Jean. Same beat, same exact one. And so, really what it is what I like to do is I like to dissect the beat. I was talking with Mike about this the other day. If you can learn that beat, you would be surprised how many songs you can play whether it's along to the radio, whether it's along to your iPod, your Apple Music, whatever it is. If it's a 4/4 beat, and granted, they're doing a bunch of different things, but if you can just forget all that, just for a minute. When I first started, all I wanted to do was just learn how to play the simplest beat along to that song. And everything else followed suit. The drum fills, the cymbals, the cymbal punches, everything else, they followed suit. But if I could just play along to that song, just playing a simple 4/4 beat, I was happy. Everything else was going to fall in line later. Of course, that takes a certain level of discipline still. You still have to apply yourself to do those things, but they're not just going to magically happen. But if you can just play the 4/4 beat along to a song, man, it was just so fulfilling. It was just like, wow, I can't believe I'm playing along to this song. You know what I mean? And so if you do this, like, I'm trying to remember how my notes are here. But if you just, so if you do, this is going to be going all the time. So it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And remember that this is on the 1 and the 3, 2 and the 4, right? So. Okay? Now, that can be challenging at times, especially when you're trying to work on your limb independence, right? So what I like to do is, I like to dissect a beat, okay? I like to dissect a beat and just start simple. Just break it down. If all you do is just work on this, just work on your muscle memory. I saw a quote the other day that said, don't practice until you get it right, practice until you can't get it wrong.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
Okay? There's a lot of truth to that. I mean, I can agree with that. So, instead of just going in it just full force and trying to play the whole thing all at once, if you can just dissect it and just, at the very beginning, just go. 1, 1. When you get that down, then you start working on 1 and 2. 1 and 2. You know what I mean? 1 and 2. And then later on, you go 1 and 2 and 3. Then 1 and 2 and 3. Then you did a 4/4 beat right there, right? Now what I would do when I would get it down is I'd put the sticks down. I'd go watch an episode of television or something. I'd go get a glass of water, mow the grass, whatever, right? Then I'd come back, and if I could do it and make sure that it wasn't just a fluke, that I got it right the first time, then I know that I'm getting it down. Then I know that my muscle memory is getting better, and then I know that I'm able to start. Are there any questions about that before we go on? We'll kind of have a little Q&A afterwards, but is there, feel free to stop me and ask anything. If Mike, looks like your gears are turning here.
No, they're always
Okay.
just sometimes slower.
Yeah.
No, it makes sense.
Okay. So, try and pull up something so that way my phone doesn't. So, now, what we're going to do now is we're going to do something very simple. And all we're going to do is just modify. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how we can keep something very simple. And then if we just modify just one thing, you can make a completely different song with the same beat and just modifying something. So what we're going to do is I'm going to do my best. Keep in mind, I'm flawed, but we're going to play a simple 4/4 beat, what I just showed you guys. So it's going to be. Okay, we're going to do that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep two things the same and just change up one thing. So we're going to start with the bass drum. And then eventually we're going to go back to basics on that, and then we're going to switch up the snare. And then after that, we're going to go back to basics, and then we're going to switch up the hi-hat. And you may or may not, I don't know, but you may be amazed at how different it'll sound, and you'll probably be like blown away, like, wow, I can't believe that's the same beat. And with just a little bit of modification, you can make a completely different song. Okay? So it's like. That's the 4/4 beat that I just taught you guys, right? What I'm gonna do is just change up the bass drum just a little bit. So these stayed the same. Did you notice that? They did not deviate in any way, and the only thing that I changed up was the bass drum. And yet I modified it 3 different ways, and you were probably able to create 3 different songs by just does that make sense? Is that, I mean, is your mind blown or is it not? Because I was
It's
was that
flowing.
Adding colors.
adding, yeah. So now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna try to just keep this the same, and just modify the snare, so. So that's all it is. I tried to keep this the same, it kind of changed up a little bit. But now, hi-hat, right? So. Yeah. So there's that. A little bit of botches there, here and there, but it's just me being human. But do you see how that just changes so many things? Like you could just make so many different songs with that. And then if you want to get creative, you just. Eventually you'll get to where you can mix them all up and then just make your own little funky song. Work with that. So this kind of the route you were.
Yeah, so like on a Sunday morning, how would you kind of some of these creative things? How would you mix those into a song we're all singing to?
Yeah.
Where our melody is the same,
Right.
and yet
I think it really just depends on the mood of the song. Like, if we're playing something like Como Sinner, obviously that doesn't call for any drums, but I'm not going to be like, it just depends on the song. If it calls for something like that, sometimes there's like some funky songs. I'm trying to remember whatever song we were singing, I think at the Psalm Sing. It was like a real jazzy.
what about like
No, that's 6/8.
Yeah, that's 6/8.
Yeah, that's 6/8. A 4/4
I keep going.
Okay.
think of it.
Yeah.
We can have a Q&A
So, there's just like, depending on the simplicity of the song and just the involvement of everything else that's going on, it'll determine how much. Like, there's some times where I'm like doing like just basically something simple like this. And then whenever Colin starts doing like this crescendo type thing during the song, then what I'll do is I'll kind of, just kind of add, let the snare speak a little bit more, you know what I mean? And let it do a little bit more talking during the crescendo to add to what he's doing, you know what I'm saying? Then whenever that's done and we come back down, then I'll. Does that make sense? I hope that answered your question. Okay. You trying to find the song? Yes, sir.
Anyone that's more
So-
jazz.
Saying, so after Mr. Collins done for the day crescendo, you would do all of that.
Yeah. You go back down, or even come completely out, or whatever the song calls for. I'm really just trying to teach you all the simplicity of a 4/4 beat, but as you go along, every song is going to require something different. You see what I'm saying? There may be a part where it calls for a cymbal choke, or even a fade in or something like that. You know what I mean? So Now,
But you're paying attention, so to go back to, you're paying attention. Like you're not oblivious to the words. You're paying attention to what we're
yeah,
saying. And that helps you know what to color.
yeah, yeah. The words and the music, just to try and like not,
You're listening.
yeah, like if, you know, if there's a part where it's talking about, you know, Jesus rising victoriously from the grave and it calls for some punches, you know, I definitely don't want to be like,
Playing.
yeah. Or, you know, if it's like, you know, not trying to be funny, but at the same time, I'm trying to make a point, you know, if we're talking about, you know, Jesus praying in the Garden of Gethsemane, I mean, that's a very somber moment. Definitely not going to be doing punches at that time or a drum fill. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I definitely want to make sure that the drums, and of course, when Colin sends me music, I do my best to compliment the musician that's already played. Also, maybe not completely 100%, but I do my best to somewhat emulate.
Point, yeah.
Yeah. So then we got the 4/4 beat where we can place. What I'm going to do, I'm going to try. Forgive me, guys, because I feel like I don't do well under pressure. But so what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the 4/4 beat again. And you see how I modified the snare, the bass drum, and then I modified the snare, and then I modified the hi-hat? What I'm going to do is I'm going to modify each one, but they're going to play the same thing. And you'll know what I'm talking about. So it's going to be, the bass drum's going to be, it's going to go. Right? So then what I'll do is I'll play this, watch. So what I did was I just played on the hi-hat what I was playing on the bass drum. Hear that?
Yeah.
So watch, try and pay attention. So it's going to be, it's 1 and 2, 1 and 2, 1 and 2, 1 and 2. Sorry. So then I did that, and then now watch. What's really awesome is that y'all didn't catch it till I brought attention to it. There's the beauty in that. There's a simple beauty in that you can make a completely different song, and it probably even on the same album or whatever, or even during the same performance, and people are like, "Oh no, I didn't catch that." That's cool. That's awesome. That's kind of what I'm going for. And now you can, or play the snare, the bass, and the hi-hat the same, and it goes. A little bit more busy, but if there's like a more hyped up song, you know what I mean, like a almost I don't know, techno-ish type or rockish type, you know what I mean. I just played on the snare what I first played on the bass drum. I don't know, did you catch that? Now you were paying attention to it, right?
Yeah.
Now you knew what to look for. But what I just did was I played this on the 1, the N, and the E. So it's. That makes sense? That makes sense. Okay. So it's just what I'm trying to get across is just it's amazing how many different things you can do with just a simple 4/4 beat. How much fun you can have with it, how creative you can get with it, how much you can branch out. I would venture to say that there are millions, could even be billions, of songs written with that beat alone. And we probably don't even recognize it or even realize it. You know what I mean? And it's all because what they're doing is they're just adding their own little flair like I just showed you guys. You know what I mean? If they just did something like that, like it right there. So, any questions?
Yes. How do you do that?
It's practice, buddy. It's practice. It's practice.
I've got one.
Yes, sir.
So when you're doing the modification,
No,
like,
no, it doesn't.
like,
No, it doesn't. I was just trying to show that, just to show, for the sake of example, that if I keep two things the same and just modify one thing, and then go back to keeping that the same and just modify this one, and then keep this the same and modify this, it's just amazing how differently they sound. Do you see what I'm saying? That was just for the sake of example. You understand? So there's also like, there's a 4/4 beat that I came up with. I hope I can play it well. It's a 4/4 beat, and it's what I'm playing is it would normally have a 16th note hi-hat on it, so it would be. But what I did was I'm just playing every other one on this one. And so I think it's, what is it? Is it in the and? Anyways, what it is, and it's a very linear beat. And what I mean by that is, if you'll pay attention, no two things are being played at the same time. Okay, so like on a regular 4/4, the snare drum, the bass drum, and the hi-hats are being played at the same time. So it's, see that? And then the snare and the hi-hat. This is linear in that no two things are being played at the same time. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to modify a 4/4 beat, and I came up with this. So it goes. So, if you paid attention, no two things are being played at the same time. If you go back to the 2024 edition of VBS, when Peter asked me to perform for the Gospel Fuzzies, I was like, hey, Mike, you're performing for the Gospel Fuzzies. Their crowd is very unforgiving. You better bring it. So, if you go back to the 2024 edition of VBS Gospel Fuzzies rap, I'm playing that. I'm playing that.
there we go.
But if you just pay attention, just pay attention. Look at what I'm doing. Watch. So. So that was just a modified rendition of a 4/4 beat. Just my own little flair. See what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I've never like broken down a beat, dissected it like you.
Yeah.
I don't have no formal musical training, so it's like
Neither
I've
do I,
never-
man,
I've never
so-
thought of, like, yeah,
Neither do I.
that way. I was
Yeah.
just like, you just have to take the beat as a whole. You
Yeah.
know, I've never like, okay, well, what is it hi-hat?
Yeah.
Or the dynamics of the song. And it's like,
Yeah.
to take something very basic and just
Yeah.
to make something completely.
When you think about it, and I have no shame in saying this, there's really nothing, like wow about that beat. I mean, yeah, it sounds appealing, you know what I mean? But when you start breaking it down, it's like, oh wait a minute, what? Like, are you kidding me? Like, that's all he's doing? You know what I mean? And so, and I have no shame in saying that. I actually want that, because what I'm trying to get across here is that I think any musical instrument can be intimidating if you allow it to be. You see what I'm saying? But then when you break it down and you're like, oh man, there actually really is such a simplicity to it. there is just another fallen human being, imperfect human being, playing the drums. Granted, I'm not downplaying the amount of practice they put into it. We're fixing to get to that. But it's still just a person, a fallible human being that took it upon themselves to learn, what to do. You know what I mean? What they're playing. So does that make sense? So we're going to go over limb independence. I know one of the things that it does require is limb independence, even though the 4/4 is very simple. One thing that I've always seen drummers do, even myself when I first started, is they just can't get past the. So again, we're going to go back to the first part where you talk about dissecting, right? And so what I like to do, this is just an exercise. I don't know if I'm the one that came up with it. I just know that I just started doing it one time. So what I'm doing is I'm basically just doing, pay attention to what I'm doing. I'm playing this, so it's. Now, if I take this away, it's basically this hand that's gone. And really, when you think about it, this hand's doing the same thing. Now, if I add my feet, I don't know if I can play that. Let me see. And really what everything is doing is they're just playing single notes, like they're just playing, I don't know what to, yeah, it's one at a time, but they're offset. You understand what I'm saying? So like these are going. Right, and then this is. So, just a little exercise that I came up with. If you guys come up with something else better or different, whatever helps you, that's okay.
Driving a stick shift, I think, helps.
Yeah, for sure, man. But
I think like all different things moving like kind of their own.
yeah, but what I think that'll do is that I think that eventually helped me. Like whenever we're playing, like if we're playing like a real jazzy 4/4, then when we go. I think exercises like that will allow you to kind of venture out, with your limb independence and help you, like, you know what I mean? Because when you can play something offset, like on the bell, like, you know what I mean? Yeah. At least that's what it does for me. You know what I mean? No, no, we're good.
Okay, so I'm thinking about a song like we didn't do this year, we did last year.
Okay.
The I sought the Lord,
Yeah.
and He answered me.
Yeah, so something like that wouldn't necessarily, like I wouldn't necessarily probably play the bass drum on every measure, maybe just every other measure or something like that, or like every other what is it? The one, this will be like. Because I felt like if I did the 1 and the 3 over and over again for a song like that, I feel like it would just be too.
Yeah, it's like the emphasis is on the 1 and the 2. The
Yeah.
3 and 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what I do is I also switch up the hi-hat just a little bit. So it'll be like,
Kind of like modifies that gap where the bass drum leaves.
yeah, yeah. And just kind of, just kind of tickling this, I kind of call it, it'd be like. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I hope does that help? It just depends on what the song calls for, because there's some times where a 4/4 beat at its core can serve the song well, or there can even be a redundancy, which there's nothing wrong with redundancy as long as the song calls for it. But then if a song doesn't call for it, then that's when you want to start modifying and complementing the song. Does that make sense? Any questions before we move on? Because now we're about to go into.
I like that. Just like, not trying to make
Yeah,
figuring out playing. It's different, kind of going from like guitar, bass, where it's very laid out. Maybe the dynamics change, but it's like what you're playing is what you're playing. Whereas the drums,
yes.
and struggle, but like that's the essence of
Yeah.
of it. I think like, between someone who play drums and someone who's good at playing.
Yeah. Well, my favorite drummer, Jeff Beccaro from Toto, they have this song on their 7th album, and if you're wanting to go look for the album, it's called The 7th One. That's the name of the album. Not very creative
I
with
was
that
gonna
one.
say that's nuts. Like the 7th album.
Yeah,
At
yeah,
that point, Jay, you don't have to worry about your name.
yeah, yeah. But they have this
The
song.
recall is what I've been saying.
Yeah. They have this song called Mashanga. And I watched the video of his, and I recommend you guys, if you guys are interested, I'll be happy to send you the video. But there's a song called Mashanga, and it's the way he just came up with that drum beat. I'm like, wow, I don't even know if I was given 1,000 years to come up with a beat like that, if I would have even had the creativity. Like I'm not even going to attempt to play the whole thing because he's Jeff and I'm not. But he's just. You know what I mean? And then he's, yeah, and he's like. I'm butchering it, but just what he came up with, I'm like, how? Like, you know what I mean? But then again, that's where you get into one of the things that I have a huge amount of respect for is people who are like in cover bands, and then like when you get your keyboard warriors who take to YouTube or whatever or Instagram are like, oh, they're not playing like that guy. Well, of course not. That's what was in the original artist's heart. What's that?
We're covering it.
Yeah, that's what would like that. You're attempting to speak a certain drummer's vocabulary. You get what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And granted, there's some people that get pretty close or downright right on top of it. But I give grace where grace is due, man. And like if someone doesn't, don't get me wrong, there's people out there that I'm like, no, man, you have no earthly business covering that song. like what I just did. I probably shouldn't have done that, but you got to give grace where grace is needed. Like, hey, give that person some grace, man. They're trying to speak someone else's language. That was what came out of that person's heart. What came out of their, you know what I'm saying? When they wrote it. So if the person covering that song, if it's not exactly up to par, okay, it's a cover band, like you said. You know what I mean? If you really want the real deal, go watch the actual band. You know what I mean? But if I'm gonna watch a cover band, I'm gonna expect it maybe not exactly to sound exactly like the original guys. You know what I mean? That's just me though. Somebody may disagree with me, and that's okay. So some thoughts here. Yes, sir.
How did you do the hi-hat, blah, 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 blah?
Oh, the worst thing you can ever ask a drummer to do is to try and slow down. So I don't even know how I did it, buddy. I'm just trying to play what Jeff did. Cause I'll try and send your dad that video though. Okay. I may have already, but I'll try and send it to him again. Okay. Because it's probably been a while. I may have gotten lost in the shuffle of all the times we've texted each other. But yeah.
When you started playing Jeff before,
Yeah.
like what he
Yeah,
was.
I'm already thinking in terms of like not a whole beat, but like
Yeah.
which one's being changed and how.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Like
fun.
there was one,
You and I were thinking probably the same.
like there was one, yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
No, yeah, that's.
I think this is a 4/4 slow slide. And there's one that I came up with that's like, I'm trying to see if I can play it. It's been a while since I played it, but like.
Yeah, you lost me.
So I mean, when you hear it at its core. But I changed so many things. I'm not even going to go over the 1E and the 2E stuff because I don't even know if I have enough time to do that. But keep in mind, I have no musical background. And if anyone.
I heard that. I'm just thinking, move over, Jeff.
Well, it's easy to come up with stuff like this in my head, but then when I have no musical, like as far as like people who, if anyone who knows how to read music, they're gonna be like, man, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. I would probably 100% agree with him because I don't know how to read music. I don't know how to do any of that. I think people like Colin have just been gracious enough to let me come up here and play
But
without.
like what you demonstrate is the struggle that, like that's where we started, was learning how to read music. Not just dissecting it, but this is where the
Right.
and so this is yeah. So it's like that may be true, but I think for the person that this is like magical.
Right.
This is so it's like that in mind too.
Okay.
It's like-
Thank you. I'm
I'm
humbled
looking
by
at
that.
you. I'm like, this is magic.
Yeah, I agree. It's like if I'm on guitar one week and drums on another, like my approach
Yeah. 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 Any questions on this side? Nothing?
and yeah, it can be intimidating for sure.
Yeah.
It's like I have all the like
Well,
sheet music of the chords or whatever. And
we're
I know
gonna-
exactly what I got to do.
we're going to touch up on intimidation too. So I got a video to send you. And trust me, if you're anything like me, I was not any more encouraged when I saw the drum video because I was like, what is he doing, man? But anyways, so a couple things to go over. Is this still active, Colin?
Yeah, it should be.
Just some thoughts here. First off, drums are an instrument, not just a noisy timekeeper. We need to remember that. I think we went over how I make my students wait 6 months. Drums are very polarizing in nature, right? They're loud, naturally loud. I mean, even if you can have the most skillful player up here playing the drum set, and you're still going to have people be like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want that. So they're very polarizing in nature. I learned that a long time ago, and I learned that most of the pushback that I got, believe it or not, was actually in church. But that's just the one thing you want to do is just respond with grace, and just respond with maturity. It has nothing to do with age. Little man here is the youngest one here. He can probably respond a million times better than I've done. When I was twice his age. You know what I mean? Just want to make sure that try and contribute to the solution, not the problem. as it were. You know, you're not going to help anyone or do anyone any favors if you pop your mouth off to someone who popped their mouth off to you. Show some, you know, just have humility. And I think part of that is learning, knowing your environment. The reason why I play with these here is because if I was to play, and let me know if you guys can tell the difference, but if I was to play versus, you can kind of hear it's a little softer, right? Or, right? I can already see Landon's face is like,
Sharp.
yeah, versus, see what I'm saying? You got to learn how to read the room and know exactly what you can play. And so there's times for this, and of course when I'm doing a rim shot, you know, if I was to play like this, like you're not going to hear that so much as you hear. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Or, you know, if we're playing something very, very jazzy like, you know, you just. Or, again,
Fred Armisen.
yeah. Or during the Good Friday service, there's a song called "Come O Sinner," and again, just respecting the original artist rendition of the song, and just knowing what exactly does the song call for. And guys, I don't do probably any more than 2 of these during the whole song, and it just sounds phenomenal. Not because it's me that's doing it, but just because of what's being played during the song. You understand what I'm saying? That's all the song calls for. You see what I'm saying? So just knowing your environment, knowing your room. There was a kid that I heard that, you know, he basically just had, you know how they say sometimes like, well, they just have one speed and it's, you know, 100 miles an hour. And that's the way it was with him with drums. And I'm like, you got to know your dynamics. You got to know, you know, Little Man was talking about the bass drum, right? Like, you know, trying to work on, because he was killing it up here. He was doing the 4/4, but he was saying, man, you know, he was noticing that he was doing. He was like hitting the bass drum real hard. When you get, you know, go further along, you get better, and you work on your muscle memory, and you work just on controlling your body. You start to. Just depending on what the song calls for.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If we're rocking up here, tearing it up, having a good old time, then yeah, you know, you're going to hit the snare a little bit louder, or the hi-hats or whatever. You know what I mean? So, we'll talk more about dynamics hopefully at a further. This is funny right here. All zeros. Let me see. Maybe you can't see. All right, you're good, man. Let me see. I'm gonna keep pushing it. Full batteries. There we go. So, what do you guys notice about that pie chart there? None of the colors are the same. Notice anything about them?
Do you get it?
No.
The guy's trying to say the benefits of being a drummer, and nothing in the pie chart is the same color. So I hope you're not getting into drums for those reasons. Let me try and explain this through the lens of a regenerate, sanctified mind.
There you go.
As far as girls go, Courtney's the only one for me. And when she used to watch me play my gigs with my band, You know, she's like, man, she goes, you're a great drummer. She goes, but you really got to lay off the facial expressions. And I was like, what are you talking about? She's like, because you're like. I was like, okay, I'll try to think about that. So, thanks to her, I don't do that here.
I'll tell you this. When I go back and watch, you must have like really like worked on it because there's almost none. I would say I'd love to see a little more.
Yeah,
I find that middle
That's
ground.
what Erica, she tells me the opposite. She's like, you need to smile more. You always look like an angry.
Well,
Focus face.
I think I have to be like that because if not, then I'll let it slip. You know what I mean?
I see.
What is it? The fame and the money. Again, let me explain that through a sanctified mind. 23 years ago, back in 2002, me and my cousin, the same guy that is the reason why I'm a drummer, who popped that music on for me, and we were talking, and he said, and keep in mind, this is 2002. He said that you have a higher probability of winning the lottery before you make it in the music business. Okay? I don't know how true that was, but I mean, I'm not saying that he was just feeding me a bunch of baloney, but I would say that in 2002, that may have been true because now the landscape has completely changed with social media. You have so many platforms, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, that people are like sitting in their garage. They modified it and turned it into a studio, and they're probably racking in millions of views. And thus, they're probably making the money, making the money, and along with it comes the fame. I don't think fame doesn't have to be a bad word. You know what I mean? You have preachers on YouTube that are famous in the sense that they're well known. You know what I'm saying? Their name's out there. You know, they're selling books. They have podcasts. They have things like that. I think that as long as there's nothing wrong with having the being well noticed and having the money that goes along with it, as long as you know where your priorities lie. And compromises come in and things like that. Slippery slope. Yes, sir.
Just like the word in itself is not bad. Not bad in itself, but
Next teacher for the drumming class, man.
Point, Richard.
Good job, buddy. There you go, man.
got that from my mom.
There you go. Good job, buddy. That right there. You see what I'm saying? Somebody's a whole lot better than I am, man. So good job, little man.
Thank you.
So, like in the context of just the just it's something that could easily feed incredible today. I don't know. It's like receiving the compliment, but trying to turn it. The Lord is the one that will praise.
Yeah. For the longest time, I tried to shy away from stuff like that.
Game, I remember you saying like you weren't sure about.
I've fought it for very long. There's a danger, at least for me. Again, I was telling Colin that, I graduated valedictorian from the School of Hard Knocks. So, when I was growing up, being a self-taught drummer, there's a danger in that. At least there was for me, because I felt like I popped my collar out a little bit. Look what I learned on my own. So, and then whenever I started attending a certain church, the pastor there would almost, it was almost commanded that we would say to God be the glory, and I get that, but it was almost like it was like, a reprimand if you didn't, like, if we failed to do so, you know what I mean? And so, I don't know if maybe the pendulum just swung too far the other way or what, but it's taken some years for me to finally realize, like, there's nothing wrong with taking a compliment, but also use that as a platform for magnifying the majesty of Christ and what he's done. He's the only reason why I have this talent. It has nothing to do with me. You know what I mean? It really has nothing to do with me. He could have gave it to someone else. Mike Robles decided all of a sudden he's going to cross his arms tomorrow and have a pity party and not ever want to praise God. Well, the Rocks are going to praise him. You know what I mean? He's going to have an audience no matter what. And, the Lord does not need Mike Robles. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Like, it's taken me some years, but I've learned to, like, try and, say, like, even at work. I've gotten compliments from people like, only the worker that I am because of what Christ has made me.
To be able to serve in this area of the church, it's bigger than any one person. Humble helps let you continue to participate in the congregation. And, I think that allows to kind of keep your ego in check too. Every week you can kind of be like, well, I'm the guitar guy.
Yeah.
Like, no, you're just, like you said, a regenerate follower of Christ who serves the church, but that's not like the station.
Yeah. In fact,
Your identity is not.
there you go.
Yeah.
To add to that,
Dial that into as
Yeah.
focal a point as possible.
if any of y'all remember my testimony during the Christmas Eve service, I struggled so long with whether God's not okay with Mike Robles. He accepts his son. I once heard it said, ever since the fall of man, there's only been one person that walked this earth that God accepted them just the way they were. Else, you need to be covered in the blood. So, Christ is the only one that was, after the fall, ever since the fall of Adam, because, Jesus is the better Adam. He's the perfect Adam. And so God accepts Christ. He accepts his sacrifice. I have to be hidden in Christ, because outside of Christ, there's no hope for Mike Robles. And it took me a long time to realize that. Even as being a drummer in my early days, here's the thing, God could not care less about me being a drummer, in the sense that my identity is either in Adam or in Christ, right? But now, at the same time, God is concerned about my drumming. as a regenerative. Does that make sense? I hope that's not like a contradiction or anything. You can doctor it up if you want, or just say, Mike, you're completely wrong. But yeah, God's not concerned. As far as my standing with Christ, as far as my standing with Him, my drums mean nothing to Him. Like, Mike, why should I let you in my kingdom? Well, I drummed in the church for 30, buddy. That's not good enough. You're gonna have to do better than that. But then now that I'm in Christ, the works that I do for Christ, for God, I'm like, Mike, what did you do with the talent that I gave you? Yes, sir.
How would the rocks cry out?
That's just the Lord saying that He's going to get praise from anything. Of course, He's God. He can.
Well, so this tomorrow's Palm Sunday. So when Jesus was coming, like you can't stop.
That's probably gonna be up on there.
I hope someone reads that tomorrow.
Okay,
Yep.
moving on. I know we're a little pressed for time, but I don't know. I mean, it may be still a little past 12. I hope that's okay. But again, graduated School of Hard Knocks. Do better than me. Learn from me in as far as not repeating these same mistakes. Can anyone name who the best drummer in the world is? And it's not Jesus, as far as like, that's the Sunday school answer. It is Jesus, but he's not the answer I'm looking for. Like, if Jesus anytime Jesus was to pick up a pair of sticks, he's obviously the best, but we're not going to use the Sunday school answer. Yes, sir?
Jeff Porcaro.
No. Good try. Good try.
Mike Rose.
No. No. If Jeff Porcaro is it, Mike Rose. There actually is no such thing as the best drummer. A lot of people have said that Buddy Rich was the greatest drummer that ever lived. If you go watch any of his videos and see the talent that he had, for them to say that he never practiced, I'll say that if there's anyone that is deserving of that moniker, it would be him. But there is no such thing as the best drummer ever. Growing up, I would say, oh, this guy's the best drummer. No, this is the best drummer here. And then you start probing it and you start to realize he's not really the best drummer. He's just my favorite drummer. You know what I mean? If you ever notice that sometimes when you say, this guy's the greatest whatever, well, it's wrapped in bias. Because it just happens to be a person that you just happen to adore and you want to emulate and you love everything that they do. And so there is no such thing as the best drummer. I've seen people who are great rock drummers. Neil Peart from the band Rush, he's going to go down in history as one of the greatest rock drummers ever. But if you ever saw the guy play jazz, it's like, buddy, you got to know what your limits are. Have someone like Mike Mangini, who's like the fastest drummer and one of the fastest drummers in the world. He plays 1,200 single strokes in a minute. So that's 600 strokes per hand. But the guy tried playing like salsa music, and one of his buddy drummers, who's a phenomenal Latin drummer, he said, yeah, you don't have what it takes. So, there's drummers that are great in their genre, but, they just got to maybe stay in their own lane, because if they try something else, you got to give them credit for trying something different, but sometimes you just got to know your limit. That's part of being human, right? Is knowing like, hey, I can do this, I can't do this. I can try it, but then if there comes a point where I'm giving it my all and I just can't do it, well then. And I tried to do that. There was a time where I wanted to like just be the best at every genre, and boy was that exhausting. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, man, I'm trying so hard, and then I would get intimidated by the drummers and this and that, and it took me years, even a couple decades, to finally realize that there is no such thing as the greatest drummer ever. If someone says, hey, did you know that drummer knows more than you? Okay, well, there was a time where they didn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There was a time where they didn't. They just applied themselves more and a little bit longer. oh, well, they're a prodigy, you know. Okay, that still has nothing to do with that person. That still has, like, if Buddy Rich was a prodigy, who's the greatest drummer ever practiced, that just meant that God, out of his sovereignty, decided to just bestow on a certain individual the ability to play drums, you know, without having to apply themselves much through practice. God can do that. You know what I mean? He's God. But it has nothing to do with that person. Do you see what I'm saying? And so Jeff Porcaro had a great story one time. He was giving a drum clinic like back in 1986, and he was talking about and Jeff Porcaro was one of the most world-renowned drummers out there. He probably drummed for hundreds, if not thousands, of artists. I think his album sales equal 500 million. You know what I mean? When you combine everything that he did with Toto, Aretha Franklin, you know, Steely Dan, Doobie Brothers, Seals and Croft. I mean, just 500 million albums. And he was doing this drum clinic, and he said that he would get phone calls from Frank Zappa, who was like this renowned musician that just had like this revolving door of musicians. Like, if you played if Frank Zappa called you, you've arrived, right? Like you know you've made it. If you get that call from Frank Zappa, you're doing something right. And he said that he would never return Frank's calls. And he said it wasn't because I was trying to be a jerk. It's just that I saw what he would put my friends Terry and Vinny through in the studio, and he would tear me to shreds. And I'm like, whoa, Jeff Porcaro is saying this. You know what I mean? And so when I heard Jeff say that, I was like, oh man, maybe I need to ease up on myself. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have to learn everything. You know what I mean? And if you want to be the best, then just be the best at what you do. Does that make sense? Like, if I can excel in something that I'm doing, then, you know, do that. Like, just try and be a better version of myself as far as drumming goes. But don't worry about competition with anyone else, man. That's for the birds. You know what I mean? Yes, sir.
Who is the fastest?
Well, he's one of them, but I don't. I think he was in the Guinness Book of World Record for a while. But to me, speed really means nothing. Like, if someone was to say, "Hey, would you rather have speed or would you rather have feel?" I'll go with feel any day. Speed only gets you so far. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's impressive, but to a point. I'm like, okay. I mean, you know, to me, that's only going to get you so far. It gets you in the Guinness Book of World Records, but you know what I mean? But I know he was in there, I think, a couple times, but I don't know if there's anyone that's faster than him.
Who is the strongest?
I don't know.
That's my problem.
Don't be intimidated by other drummers. Don't be intimidated by prodigies. Practice. Can anybody read this? What does it say? Yeah. So the person's like, how do you perform so well? Must be an innate gift. Musicians go through practice. I can never understand why some people have talent like this. Practice. Like, there's nothing. It's all about practice, man. So it's all about practice, right?
That person is not listening.
Don't even listen.
I love practice. It's like the one place where you can just get all your mistakes out. Like, I've got like a quota of mistakes to hit.
Yeah.
You know, that's how, especially with the drums.
So the third slide is just basically keep it simple. And this quote, it was from, I think, Alfredo Reyes Jr. I use my drumming to show off the music. I don't use the music to show off my drumming. I think you kind of touched up on that before. You kind of beat me to the punch.
Yeah, that's kind of my sort of approach.
Yeah.
I use the analogy because I love sports, especially like baseball, right? Like, you can't really have a baseball game without umpires. They're kind of an easy target to complain about, but like, musicians are like good umpires, right? Like, the best ones you rarely ever notice that they're there.
Yeah, that's good, man. That's a good point right there.
Yeah,
I like
that's
that.
it's like the more people are aware of you, there's probably something wrong with what you're doing, whether making mistakes or just overplaying
Yeah.
or whatnot. So, like you said, like use that to elevate the music.
Yeah.
To help it reach the full potential.
Yeah, like we touched up on that song "Como Sinner," where I just did like like a swell or two. And then there's even times Colin can attest to this where we're playing a song, and I'll tell Colin, I was like, "Hey man, I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't even know if the song needs drums, just because it's just so what's the word? There's like an ethereal feel to it, and just a majestic feel that I'm like, I feel like the drums would actually mess it up. You know what I mean? And there's times where he'll say, well, if you want to do like a swell or something else, or he's like, there's times where he's gone with it. He's like, yeah, man, if you don't feel it needs to be drum to, then great. You got to know how to read the music. You got to know how to not read music as far as sheet music, because I'm lost there, but know the room. We talked about dynamics, so we covered that, right? Knowing how to play a drum soft, or just banging the mess out of it, I can't remember who came up with this quote. May have even been me. I don't know. A good musician knows when to play, but a better musician knows when not to play. Okay? A good musician knows when to play. A better musician knows when not to play. And my old band, it was a heavy metal band, and it was two guitarists, and you had Derek and you had James, and they were both great in their own right. Don't get me wrong; they were both great. But Derek was all about, I felt, how many notes he could fit in one measure. Just flying all over the fretboard. And then there was James, who could like just pluck one note and sustain it, maybe even use like the whammy bar. And to me, I felt like something simple like that complemented the song even more. A lot of times it wasn't about how fast you can fly up and down that fretboard. It was just about how you can play one note and sustain it and what it can do for the song. We're about to wrap it up. The last one here, I had to finish with him, man. But I'm going to read it through the lens of the sanctified mind. Whatever gift God gave me, for whatever reasons, I never knew if Jeff was ever saved, but even the most even a lost person can use that in a very generic sense. I, however, am going to use it through a regenerate and sanctified mind. And I agree with that 100%, but in my heart, I know that to be true, and that this is what God has chosen to give me. This is what he's bestowed upon me. And I just want to give it back to him. You know what I mean? I mean, he's worthy of it. Stay humble. Stay humble, man. I mean, nothing's more ugly than a proud musician. Horrible to be around. At work, I'm one of the trainers at my job, and one of the things that's very frustrating for the trainees is they feel like they're not learning fast enough. And in my mind, I feel like they are, because I was once there. And I always tell them, I was like, this is the kind of job where you're not going to be able to just gather information in just one swoop. You're going to gather information in small increments, and next thing you know, you turn around 7-8 months later and you're like, wow, you've amassed so much information and so much knowledge. You didn't even realize it. And I said, to me, those are actually the better people to work with, because if they grabbed it in just small increments, I feel like there's more of a humility to them. It's the people who have like amassed the knowledge like very fast and very easily. Those are the hardest ones to be around, because they tend to be know-it-alls. You know what I mean? And they tend to be like, well, I learned this fast or whatever. Oh, man, you know what I mean? Like, they're just kind of hard to be around, and you just transfer that to the world of music. And sometimes when, again, me, I think that if there was like a way to like go to like an alternate universe, and if I was able to run into like the 16-year-old version of me, I'd beat myself up. Like I would not tolerate my 16-year-old version of myself. There's no way. You know what I mean? Like, so just stay humble. I think I've told some of y'all this story. Little man, I may have told you. Mike, I can't remember who all I've told, but when I was drumming at the first church that I started attending after I was saved, and I thought I was God's gift to drums. I thought when God was creating the drums, he's like, this is for Mike, And so we were having this combined service with another local church there in town, and there was a lot of people, man. It was packed, and the drum set was set off to the side over here, and the way it was like you could see the side profile, like you could see the drums were kind of facing that way, kind of how Colin sometimes has the piano. That's the way the drums were, and it was funny the way it was because, like, pretend like these are facing this way, and on this side there was like a doorway going to like a completely different room, and it was almost not impossible, but just difficult because the way the drums were set, it was blocking that doorway, right? So the first drummer, which was the pastor's son of that church, he was about a year older than me. He was drumming, man. He was getting into it. He was enjoying it. You know, everyone was just singing and praising God. And there I was with my arms crossed, and in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, man, he played that there? Could have done this. I would have done this, man. Why did he do that, man? You know, this would have been better. You know what I mean? And it was in the middle of a song, and in you know the attitude of fellowship, in the middle of the song, he calls for me to come. Hey, man, come up here, man. Thought this dude never asked, man. You know. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do this drum fill. That's just gonna be so top notch that I'm gonna have all eyes on me. Again, man, if I would run into the 16-year-old version of myself, anyways, so I was waiting, and all of a sudden, when the time came, I was going to do this drum fill. I was basically just going to run down the toms, you know, the snare, you know, just like that, but really fast. Well, when I did, I only had one set of sticks, and when I did, and then when I hit the second tom, somehow the rim clipped my stick, and it went flying into that next room. And I looked at the crowd, and man, all eyes were on me, man. You know, but not for the right reasons. I was like,
Just like you wanted.
yeah, I was. Lord's like, there you go, you know. And so I'm over here having to climb over the drum set to get the other stick. Oh, I was so embarrassed. But after that, I was like, okay, I'm done with that. Buddy Rich, referring to him again, a drum prodigy. There's these videos, and I do not suggest you guys listen to them. Please don't. But he is, somebody apparently recorded him. There's audio of him just tearing into his band on the bus. You know who I am? Do you know whose band this is? Do you know whose name is up there? This is my band. If you don't like it, you can get off this bus. I mean, just don't treat people like that, man. I mean, even if it is your band, I mean, that's just, you know, stay humble, man. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's whether we're a prodigy or whether it's practice, man, it's all bestowed upon us by God. We have to remember that. We have to acknowledge that. Whether it came to us easily or whether we acquired it through turmoil and, rough patches of road and hills and valleys, we have to know that it was all bestowed upon us by God. That I will wrap up by using this. Colossians 3:17. The Apostle Paul, under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, and whatever you do, in word or deed, do everything in the name of the Lord Jesus. Even something like this, you give glory to God. Yes, sir.
And here's also
So this is a time for Q&A. I know y'all had some questions kind of peppered throughout, but is there anything else?
Is that just practice on its own?
I think it's
Like
practice.
listening to songs?
I think it's practice. I think it's also listening to other drummers, kind of being under their tutelage. I can listen to a drummer, like the Rosanna Shuffle. I'm not gonna even attempt to play because I'm not gonna tarnish Jeff. The Rosanna Shuffle from the song Rosanna is 3 different things that Jeff put together. And it was a Bernard Purdy shuffle, which I'm not going to attempt to do that, but he did the Bernard Purdy shuffle, the John Bonham shuffle from Fool in the Rain from Led Zeppelin, and then the bass drum, he's doing the Bo Diddley shuffle. So basically, he just got like 3 different things, molded them, like melted them together, and like he was immortalized in the world of drumming by having what you now call. I mean, very few, like, I mean, how awesome is it that you have like a shuffle like named after something you did? You know what I'm saying? Like no, there's never going to be like the Mike Robles shuffle. I don't know, but the Rosanna shuffle, like, it's renowned. And it's because he borrowed it from 3 different drummers. So I think knowing, like, for me, I listen to a ton of drummers, and then from that I listen, I learn, I want to know, like, okay, why were they playing it here? Why did they choose not to play this here? You know what I mean? And then just kind of bringing that over to your drum set. Practices those same habits. How can I complement the song? I don't want to shine. It's like Landon was saying. Like, too much attention on me, then I'll be doing something wrong. It should be like just a unit up here. Colin even said that when you were out sick. And you said one of the things that you really enjoyed.
There was like a Q&A, and I asked him about like what he listened to. Songs to mine all the time. I gotta listen to, and he's like, and not all Christian. He's like, at home, like, we're listening to Christian music, but like when I'm trying to like pick up stuff, like I'll listen to stuff that's wildly or what I'm used to playing, to hear what other people are doing and get ideas. And so, like, I've started just listening to a lot more like jazz, and like, I'm not a country fan, and just to try and get ideas for different stuff. Where it's just, if I'm listening to Sovereign Grace all the time, or the Gettys all the time, it's all going to sound the same all the time. They've also grabbed things from other. That's why they sound the way they sound, and they found a great sound.
Yeah.
But like, so like when I'm thinking about Sunday morning. So listening to a wide range of stuff, I think, has helped me. I'd sound the same all the time.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, music's been around, of course, for thousands of years. But I said that there's only so many drums. There's only so many keys on a piano, on a keyboard. There's only so many frets on a bass and a guitar. There's gonna be some overlap. There's gonna be some songs that may sound similar. You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, this song reminds me of this song. Well, yeah. I mean, there's only so many things you can play. I mean, something's bound to come back, almost full circle. You know what I mean? There are bands out there that might be a little more deliberate than others, but like whenever someone says, "Hey, that sounds kind of like this one," yeah, maybe they didn't attempt to do that, but there's only so many notes. There's only so many keys. You know what I mean? So, I just like Colin said, just studying a bunch of different musicians, and I want to discriminate who I listen and don't listen to. I mean, I definitely don't want to listen to the guy that got me into drums, the drummer. convictions, godly convictions, I choose not to listen to Slayer anymore. That's not to say that Dave Lombardo doesn't have a special place in my origin story of being a drummer, but that's as far as it goes. Because their music is very blasphemous. I choose not to listen to it anymore. In fact, I would go as far as to say anyone who claims to love the Lord, you probably have no earthly business listening to music like that, man. You know what I mean? Definitely want to discriminate. If I'm listening to secular music, I do my best to try and make sure that the lyrics are as benign as possible. Out there, I listened to. There was a time where I would play like the regular 4/4 beat, and then eventually, after I started listening to Jeff, started listening to what Jeff was doing, started listening to what Bernard Purdy was doing, started listening to like Phil Collins and stuff like that, and I found out that that's when you can like. Just start messing with stuff, like kind of alter some stuff. You know what I mean? And then I think if we have our next lesson, like eventually, I would like to do. Another thing too, and I definitely don't want this to be intimidating to you guys, but what's fun for me is like learning how to play open-handed. So, you know what I mean? So like, there's like, what I do, the reason why I have this slanted like this is because I treat it as a crash, but I also treat it kind of like a ride. So like what this is doing. I love playing the 6/8 on this right here, man.
Weird. It's like writing left-handed.
I love playing the 6/8 on here because then what I do is like if I'm able to play this, like. So that allows me to like do the drum fills over here as opposed to like having to cross my hand. But then that's what this bass drum over here is for too.
Oh yeah.
That's a bass drum?
Floor tone. Sorry, floor tone. Good catch. Good catch.
Oh, like, wait.
Lesson's over. I messed up. No, no, actually, lesson is over. So any questions, guys?
No.
No, thank you, man. That was
I hope this is what Colin was looking for. I hope. We'll know if I ask him when the next one is. He's like,
That's a good. Like, I'm definitely next time I play, and my approach will be more of the like we talked about, like dissecting the beat down
Yeah.
instead of just trying to like emulate the entire thing as a whole.
yeah. You gotta take off. Oh yeah. Go for it, man. Like when someone says, "Here you go, Colin." When someone says, "Man, I can't play like complex stuff," I can just keep it.